Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Brother Dawood. I'm a little, I'm trying to be humble right now. That wasn't very helpful. But no, thank you very much for a wonderful introduction. I'm actually a little bit shocked to stand up here because I'm looking at my time and I've never been, ever, in any Muslim community in this country where their program was running on time. So excuse me while I'm gathering myself here. Shout out to our friends at the Michigan, the Muslim, help me out here, Michigan Muslim Community Council. I was calling them MMC for like the 3 days that I've been here, but MMCC. I'm not new to Michigan. I love Michigan. I consider it to be one of my second homes. I actually was a proud employee of Access, which is the largest Arab American organization in this country. I was based in New York City. While I love Michigan very much, I don't know if I could live in Michigan. I'm still thinking, it's not something that I think I could do yet. And what I know about Michigan is many things. And I know that the Michigan Muslim community has been an example on many fronts. And that we know that Michigan is the Muslim capital of America, whether you like it or not. And we watch you very closely. And I'm very impressed with the diversity of the Michigan Muslim Community Council, seeing the diversity of race, ethnicities, women rock stars everywhere in Michigan. I mean, the past 2 days that I've been here, I have met some of the most inspiring, courageous women at the forefront of building and promoting the American Muslim community here in Michigan. And I want you to know that you should be very proud that your women are strong and fierce and standing tall and representing your institution. So congratulations to Michigan for showing me that. When you've been going through rough times, it's good to be amongst family. I've had a pretty rough 2 weeks, and I'll be honest with you. This work isn't easy, and Brother Dawood, and for many people who are doing civil rights work and folks that are at the forefront of civil rights work here, whether it be in the American Muslim community or just in the United States in general, it's not easy. And in the past 2 weeks, I've been viciously attacked by right-wing conservatives, bloggers, by right-wing media, people who, interestingly enough, the very people who are threatening me actually, and those that are trying to intimidate and silence me, are the very people that claim that my faith does that. So they can't fathom to see a young woman like me who has a voice and who is a proud American that stands up for not only my own civil rights, but the civil rights of all people in this country. And what I tell these folks is that I can't help who I am. I am unapologetically Palestinian, I am unapologetically Muslim, and I am unapologetically American. And it's a story that I want to tell young people. And it's a story that I tell to all young people in this country, particularly young people who are children of immigrants or first and second generation American Muslims. And the reason why I stand as a proud American is because I know what my history is. I know what my story is in this country. Many of our young people don't know what their story is as American Muslims. And that is why they are conflicted. It is why sometimes they don't have the courage to stand up for themselves when they are bullied or when they are being attacked online or when they're watching TV and seeing their faith vilified, dehumanized, when people who think that they're going to be the president of the United States of America dare say that an American Muslim child can't be the president of the United States of America. And my pride comes from the understanding of my history as an American. Just like black history is American history, Islam is American history. I am a Muslim, and my faith has been in this country since the days of its founding when we brought slaves over from Africa. Our lineage, sisters and brothers, as American Muslims is so deeply rooted in this country. And if our children understood the history, understood the sacrifices of the Muslims in this country who continue to practice Islam and pave the way for people like you and me to continue to practice Islam in this country, our children would stand proud and stand tall. And when someone tells them that your faith is foreign, that you need to go back to your country, they can stand up tall and say, Me go back to my country, this is my country. And my faith has been rooted here since the foundings of this nation. And I deserve to be here just like everybody else deserves to be here. The introduction to Islam for many people in our country, and this is unfortunate, has been through the lens of 9/11. It's been through the lens of national security. It's been through the lens of the wars and the chaos that we're seeing across the world. And I want you to tell these stories in the mosques. I want you to tell the youth councils and these young people in our communities that they are the ones that need to tell this story, and you need to teach them the story of Islam in America, because that is their story, and they need to own it and they need to embrace it. And this is why I can have the courage to stand up for my community, stand up for my faith, is because I know my story, and I am the one going to tell my story the way that I want to tell it, to make sure that our young people are courageous, are fearless, and never have to question the faith that they follow. And people tell me, why do I do this work? And I tell you here that for the past 2 weeks, I'm being attacked viciously. And by the way, I'm attacked all the time. I've been getting attacked for 15 years. Nothing was really new, except when people want to threaten your life. I had someone post my public address on a public Facebook page and list the names of my relatives. These are intimidation tactics and fear tactics. And what these people can't fathom is they're seeing leadership in our community. They're watching people speak truth to power. They're watching people stand up and say, we won't take this anymore. And they can't have that. So I tell you, sisters, brothers, this to tell you that I'm not afraid. And that while the safety of my family is a priority, I also understand the importance of this work and the importance of the courage that we have to show and the example that we have to set for our children. Islam is at the foundation of my activism. I do this work because I'm Muslim, and that's what I believe that my faith tells me to do. I heard Sheikh Imam Muhammad al-Masmari say that Islam is a religion of peace. Islam is a religion of love. 100%, absolutely. But you know what else about Islam that's even more important than those two things for me? Islam is a religion of justice. And that Islam calls on us to stand for justice and stand against injustice, regardless of who those injustices are against. When I teach young people about Islam, it's not enough to teach young people how to pray. It's not enough to teach young people just to fast. And when we want to teach other people about Islam, our sisters and brothers from other faiths, I don't know how important it is for them to know that we pray 5 times a day. I don't know how important it is that they need to know that we fast 30 days in Ramadan. For me, if you want to do da'wah about Islam, if you want to tell the story of Islam, if you want people to understand what Islam is, you're going to do that through the principles and the values that you stand up for, and the places that you show up for, and the people who need you the most that find you in their presence. This, sisters and brothers, is how you teach people about what Islam is. I've been doing social justice work for about 15 years. And everyone has that moment. And you can think about your moment of why you started doing the work that you were doing. And I had a radicalizing moment. And that moment for me came last summer. And it was on August 9th. A young black boy in Ferguson, Missouri was shot. And I heard people in the Muslim community debate what happened before he got shot. Did he rough up a store owner? Did he do this? Did he do that? I wasn't really interested in having those conversations. If I debated you in this room, you're probably not my friend on Facebook anymore. But what was more important to me wasn't the fact that Mike Brown was shot, because he wasn't the first black person in our country who was unarmed to be shot by a police officer. It's what happened after that. Here we had a young boy in the United States of America who was shot unarmed by a police officer. And then he laid out in August in the hot sun for 4.5 hours, sisters and brothers, baking in his blood. No EMT, no law enforcement agencies, no one came to his aid. His mother didn't come to touch him. No community members were able to come see if he still had vital signs, if his heart was still beating. And after the 4.5 hours that he stayed out baking in the sun, some men came, a SUV drove up, picked him up off the floor. He was a big kid, threw him in the back of an SUV like he was a bag of rocks, like he was roadkill on the side of a road. And I thought to myself, how is this possible in the United States of America, that we treat one of our own citizens, someone who could be any of our children, that way? And I was moved by that story. And as I had never heard of Ferguson before that day, I didn't even know there was a town in our country called Ferguson. So I took an airplane and I went to Ferguson. There wasn't many people that looked like me, sisters and brothers, in a place like Ferguson. It's a small town, mostly African American, and I went there to the street where Mike Brown was killed. And I learned a lot from being in Ferguson. I learned that it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be angry when there are injustices, when an injustice happens in your presence. And we are told not to be angry. And I always tell people, if we're not angry when there is an injustice, for me, that is a symbol. It signifies some sort of weakness of faith. How can we not be angry when there is an injustice? And I also learned about courage. And I also learned that you don't have to be some paid activist or a community organizer, that you can be an ordinary person in Ferguson, living in an apartment complex, and you can come out into the streets and say what happened to Mike Brown was wrong. Sisters and brothers, while there are many accomplishments, and again, remember that I'm not from Michigan and I'm an outsider, but I have traveled to many cities across this country. And I appreciate looking at the beauty, the wins. And I'm going to talk about 2 wins, because I know what it looks like to win, sisters and brothers. I've won before. But I also want people to understand that what's happening across the country are things we need to be aware of, and we need to understand that we have a lot more work to do, and that Michigan can lead the way in the work that we have to do on a national level. We're at a crossroads, sisters and brothers. There are things that are happening in our country that we need to stand up and say are unacceptable. We have mosque opposition, sisters and brothers. Many of you either were born and raised here. Some of you have been here for 40 years, 50 years, maybe you're second, third generation. Mosque opposition. We didn't even see mosque opposition maybe months or years immediately after 9/11. And all of a sudden, we're watching mosque opposition, the opposition to building of Islamic schools. There are lawsuits across this country where people want to stop us from building religious institutions in the United States of America. Over 22 states are trying to pass anti-Sharia bills. There are people, sisters and brothers, some of whom are lawmakers, who want to take your right away as a Muslim to practice your faith fully. There are policy, sisters and brothers, from our government, including some law enforcement agencies, who want to engage in unwarranted and blanket surveillance of our entire communities simply based on our faith. And we see that every single day in New York City. This is not me, sisters and brothers, saying this. This is secret documents leaked from the New York Police Department, written in an investigative report by the Associated Press. This is not us, sisters and brothers, with paranoia. This is fact, and this is happening, and we know it's happening in other cities across this country. Every day, sisters and brothers, we turn on the television and we see people who are acting and saying that they're acting on behalf of our faith, and we know they're not. And we see pundits on TV. We see elected officials. We see presidential candidates vilifying, dehumanizing us, telling our children that you can't be Muslim and American at the same time. This, sisters and brothers, is what we're hearing, and it's unacceptable, and we can't stand for it, no matter who's saying it, when they're saying it, and where they're saying it. I also ask you here, and I challenge people in every city that I go to. I challenge you when someone asks you, where are the Muslims who are condemning terrorism? I ask you, sisters and brothers, to challenge that. Because when you answer that question, you are legitimizing, you are emboldening this idea that we have to condemn terrorism because we're Muslim. When I condemn terrorism, sisters and brothers, and I condemn acts, rape, torture, whatever the bad act is, I condemn it because I'm human. I don't condemn it because of my faith. So please, sisters and brothers, do not feel compelled to apologize for a small group of people who are saying that they are acting on our behalf when we know that we would never put that responsibility on any other community, just like we wouldn't ask white people to apologize for Dylan Roof, who went into a black church and killed 9 black parishioners. If we don't expect that from anybody else, don't let people expect that from us. Sisters and brothers, I'm not here to be grim, and I will tell you that I know our potential as a community when we unite, when we work across racial and ethnic lines, when we work across religious lines, when we work across sector. I know what it looks like to win. On March 4th of 2015, New York City closed the largest public school system in this country in recognition of Muslim holidays. The largest public school system in the country. This was a coalition that was made up of Muslim groups, black Muslims, South Asians, Arab, converts, Balkans. This is a group made up of Jews and Sikh communities and Christians, all types of Christians. It was made up of labor unions. It was made up of civil organizations, civil rights organizations, who all stood together and said that yes, 1 out of every 8 students in the New York City public school system is Muslim, and they deserve recognition, inclusion, and respect. Think about that, sisters and brothers. We weren't asking the New York Department of Education for any favors. We didn't beg for our days off in the school system. We organized and we mobilized and we called it recognition, inclusion, and respect. And our campaign was based on dignity and fairness, and that if other communities are going to be recognized, we should be recognized. And that's how we won Muslim school holidays in New York City. In New York City, we also won another campaign. We passed landmark civil rights legislation that created the first ever Inspector General for the New York Police Department. Sisters and brothers, the New York Police Department, if it were an army, according to former Mayor Bloomberg, it would be the 7th largest army in the world. Over 37,000 members of the New York Police Department. Our New York City Parks and Recreation had independent oversight. Our Department of Transportation, our Department of Education, every city agency had independent oversight except the New York Police Department. We united with groups, black groups doing police reform for decades, Latino groups. The coalition was a rainbow and represented the best of New York City. And not only did we when we went up for a vote for the legislation, we won the first time. And then Mayor Bloomberg vetoed our legislation. And then Mayor Bloomberg put millions of dollars into PACs against city council candidates who voted for us the first time. But you know what happens, sisters and brothers? When we say the people united will never be defeated, that is not just a mantra or something that you hear at a protest, at a rally. That's real, sisters and brothers. So what did we do? We organized again. We went back to the same city council members again, and we organized again and went back for another vote 2 months later. Guess what happened, sisters and brothers? We won bigger than we won the first time. And we were able to show that money is not more valuable than people and people power. And unity is what won us the first Inspector General in New York City. Again, sisters and brothers, I'm proud to be in a room where I see all this diversity. And I want you to think about what the next step looks like. So we have imams here from many racial backgrounds, leadership, organization representing the best of the Muslim community. But let's be honest, whether it be in New York City where I'm from or right here in Michigan, we live in societies where there is hyper-segregation. Like for example, in New York City where I live, my mosque is all Arab. Let's be straight. The black people go to the black masjid, the South Asians go to the South Asian masjid, the Turks go to the Turkish masjid. And while our leadership gets along, or while we could unite around issues, the next step, sisters and brothers, is how we bring our people together. How do we bring the moms from the black masjid to hang out with the moms from the Arab masjid? And how do we cultivate an opportunity for our young people to meet each other, to understand each other, and to see themselves that they truly are from the same Muslim community? This, sisters and brothers, is not going to happen naturally. This is going to require the intentionality of the adults, of the religious leadership, the leadership of the Islamic schools, the civic organizations. It is you that is going to have to facilitate and to cultivate those opportunities to bring our young people together. Because our children are watching us. And we need to set the example for our children. Because our children are going to do what we do. If we are segregated, our children will segregate. If we are together, our children will be together. So everything that you do, sisters and brothers, let's make sure that it's whatever you're doing is what you want your children and what you want our next generation to do, because they are watching every single step that we take. I want you, sisters and brothers, and particularly those in the room who are American Muslim parents. I meet with a lot of young people. I go to MSAs across the country. I go to Islamic schools. I go to high schools where there are a lot of Muslim children. And one thing that hurts me deepest in my heart is when the students tell me that their parents are always telling them to be careful. And I say, what do your parents mean about be careful? Like when you walk in the street, be careful? They're like, no. They mean like be careful about what we say. And I say, what do you think they mean by that? And they always say, I don't know. They just don't want us to say stuff. And I say, like, what kind of stuff? They're like, I don't know. They don't want us to talk about, like, bad things that are happening, or they don't want me to post about different things. Sisters and brothers, every community that has come here before us, there was always a time when courage had to be instilled in those communities for them to move forward. And I ask you tonight, never discourage our young people and tell them to be careful. What you should be telling them is that their faith encourages them to be truth tellers. Their faith encourages them to stand up against injustice and when they see it. Their faith does not tell them that when they see something wrong to turn the other way and act like it's not happening. That's not what our faith teaches us. So I ask you, sisters and brothers, to encourage our young people to speak truth, to stand up, to be courageous, to defend themselves, their communities, and their faith. Because we need their courage, sisters and brothers. We need their courage for generations to come. What's really interesting, and I'm going to tell you this, and Brother Dawood talked about this, the best way that I've ever been able to teach people about Islam is when I went on March to Justice. And I walked with 100 people from New York City to Washington, D.C., we went, in the 9 days, we have to sleep at night, obviously. So my job was to get 2 nights during the 9 days to find mosques that would host us. So in Philadelphia, we were hosted by MAS. Shout out to the Muslim American Society and Al Hidayah Center in Philadelphia. They welcomed us in our space, 100 strangers, sisters and brothers. The imam welcomed us. Not only did they welcome us, they fed us. They cooked dinner on their premises. They gave us places to sleep. They had showers in the masjid. And the imam said to my fellow marchers who were predominantly not Muslim, this house, he talked about the masjid, this house here, this is your house. Because this house is open to all of God's creations. This house here is open to all the people who want to see justice. Because this is a house of justice. When those people who predominantly were black walked out of that masjid, and if you went to New York City and you went and met with those people, they will tell you that the most memorable experiences that they had during the March to Justice was at the mosques. And that they will defend us to their death because of the experience that they had with our hospitality as a community. So I'm going to end by telling you, sisters and brothers, that one of the biggest criticisms that I've ever seen of myself online is where people tell me, Linda is un-American. She is unpatriotic. She doesn't know that she has it good in this country. She should go back to Saudi Arabia. That's a good one. They say that to every Muslim. It's really funny, actually. And what I tell people all the time is if there was a definition, if there could be a picture of a patriot, it would be my picture. Sisters and brothers, a patriot is someone who cares so deeply about the country that they live in, the country that they were born in, that I would fight to keep making my country live up to being the greatest nation on earth. A patriot is a person who doesn't settle for less. And I will not allow my country to commit injustices and sit back and allow it to do that, because I want to be able to say that I live in the greatest nation in this world. When someone tells you to go back to your country, I always tell people, my country is Brooklyn. And I'm very proud to be born and raised in Brooklyn, but I'm also proud to have Palestinian blood and lineage, and I'm also proud to be an American Muslim. I leave you today, sisters and brothers, to reflect on your history as an American Muslim. To reflect that your history here is a history of struggle, of resilience, of perseverance. Your story is also one of opportunity, sisters and brothers. We have to seize the opportunities that are available to us. If we want to be proud American Muslims, I ask you, sisters and brothers, that you show up wherever you see an injustice. When we are raising millions of dollars, sisters and brothers, to send to our countries of origin or where our parents are from, and we should do that. I raised money for Syria, I've raised money for Palestine, and I'm very proud of the humanitarian work that we've done. But as American Muslims, your responsibility first and foremost are to the people here who live in your backyard. We could do both, sisters and brothers. So when your sisters and brothers in Detroit don't have running water and we're building wells in Africa, let's build wells in Africa. Let's make sure our sisters and brothers in Detroit also have running water in their homes. This, sisters and brothers, is the story that I want to tell. It's the story that I want my kids to tell about what we as American Muslims are doing here to contribute to the society that we live in, to make this United States of America the greatest nation on earth. Thank you to the Michigan Muslim Community Council for having me here today. Thank you to the hospitality of my sisters and brothers in Michigan. Thank you for all the work that you do every day. May Allah continue to bless you and to give you the courage and the sustainability to keep our community strong and get stronger for the generations to come. Remember that everything that you do here today is an investment in the future of the American Muslim community, and everything we do is for our young people. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Linda. Almost time for dinner, guys. We just want to recognize a few other folks. We have Amy Good from Alternative Girls here. Welcome, Amy. From Show Security, Milad Fadlallah. From the Islamic Society of North America, our ISNA Secretary General Hatem Batta is here. And Representative Martin Hauerlach. Dinner will be served now. Enjoy it. It's a scrumptious menu, and we'll be back in a few. Thanks.